At 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, the lights went out across 3 states. 2.3 million homes went dark in under 90 seconds. 4 people were dead before midnight, 2 on ventilators that lost power, 1 in a car crash at an intersection with no traffic lights, and an elderly woman who fell down a staircase she couldn't see. The governor is already on television demanding your resignation. Your biggest investor is pushing to triple customer rates to pay for infrastructure you should have replaced 10 years ago. And you are the CEO of the company that let all of this happen. This is Meridian Power Holdings. $3.8 billion in annual revenue, 8,200 employees, 847 substations serving 11 million customers across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Here's where you stand. Cash reserves are at $2.1 billion, but your emergency response is burning through $30 million a day. Customer growth has stalled at 1.2%, down from 3% just 2 years ago. Public approval has cratered to 31%, a 27-point drop since the blackout started. And your competitor, SunGrid Energy, is running a switch to solar campaign. Their customer inquiries are up over 300%. Your board has called an emergency session, 8 of 9 members present. The governor wants your head. Your grid shows 14 substations offline, with 3 running above their rated capacity threshold, including Eagle Creek, your newest station, built just 2 years ago. You have 14 months of financial runway, and the clock started the moment those lights went out. Your first crisis. 2.3 million homes are dark, and you can't fix them all at once. 4,600 field workers, enough to handle this in stages, but not simultaneously. Hospitals are running on backup generators with about 36 hours of fuel. Rural communities don't even have that. Your advisors are already in the room, and they can't agree on anything. Priya, your CFO, wants you to concentrate crews on the highest revenue urban districts. That's where the financial impact is greatest. Marcus, your COO, says, forget the budget, deploy everyone on 18-hour shifts until the grid is back. And Tom, your chief engineer, says pick up the phone and call 5 neighboring utilities for mutual aid. Their idle crews can be on your lines within 12 hours. 3 options, and every single one of them costs you something. Option A, priority grid. You focus crews on hospitals, emergency services, and the dense urban cores first. It's the most efficient use of your resources, and your CFO endorses it. But 800,000 people in rural communities sit in the dark for 6 days or more, and their phones still work. In the age of camera phones and hashtags, those communities will make sure the world sees every single hour of that wait. Option B, full surge. Every crew, every truck, deployed at once on 18-hour shifts across all 3 states. This is the fastest path to full restoration, but you'll burn through $180 million in emergency overtime in about 72 hours. And exhausted linemen working on high-voltage equipment in the middle of the night start making the kind of mistakes that don't come with second chances. Option C, mutual aid. You call your neighboring utilities and ask for help. Swallow the pride, share the grid maps. Get 400 additional crews on the ground in half the time. Full restoration in about 72 hours. The cost is different here. You're handing over your complete infrastructure blueprints, every vulnerability, every bottleneck, to companies that may not have your best interests at heart down the road. What's your call? The CEO chose full surge. Every available crew hit the field on 18-hour rotations. Within 48 hours, 1.4 million homes had power back, the fastest restoration rate in Meridian's history. Under floodlights, through freezing nights, the crews pushed, and it showed. For a brief window, the public saw a company that was moving fast and fighting hard. But the bill landed immediately. $180 million in emergency spending, 40% over the quarterly budget, gone in 3 days. And by hour 60, the first injury reports started filtering in. 3 workers hurt across separate sites, one with a fractured arm from a fall off a transformer platform. The union noticed everything, and they filed a formal safety grievance before the sun came up. Here's what would have happened on the other paths. If the CEO had gone with priority grid, hospitals would have been online in 18 hours, and the medical community would have praised the response. But 800,000 rural customers would have waited almost a week for power, and a hashtag called Forgotten by Meridian would have trended nationally for days. If the CEO had called for mutual aid, the full grid would have been restored in 72 hours, a record nobody thought was possible. But Dominion Energy would have walked away with Meridian's complete infrastructure maps, and within weeks, their parent company would have quietly started scoping an acquisition. Cash drops from 70 to 58. Trust edges up to 58. Momentum jumps to 72. That full surge bought speed and visibility. But risk climbs to 2 out of 5, and your runway shortens from 14 months to 11. The lights are coming back on. The public sees a company that's moving. But inside the building, the union is watching every injury report, and they're about to make a move that puts you right back on your heels. 72 hours of 18-hour shifts have broken your workforce. 3 workers are injured, 1 is in the hospital with a fractured arm, and IBEW Local 459, your field workers union, has filed a formal safety grievance. They're demanding a full 24-hour stand-down for every crew on the grid. Here's the math, and neither side of it is good. Comply, and 400,000 homes stay dark for 2 more days while the governor buries you on national television. Refuse, and the union may escalate to a full work stoppage that freezes all restoration for a week. Your advisors are split again. Priya, your CFO, says 24 hours of downtime costs you less than a single wrongful death lawsuit. Give the crews their rest. Marcus, your COO, says there are 200 contract linemen in Tennessee who can be on site by sunrise, and the union doesn't have to know about it. And Tom, your chief engineer, says, forget the contractors. Send the executives to the field in hard hats. If leadership shows up at a substation at 3 in the morning, the crews will keep going out of respect alone. Option A, stand down. Honor the union's demand. Pull every crew for a full 24-hour rest. Restoration timelines push back 2 days, and the governor pounces, but nobody else gets hurt, and rested crews come back faster and sharper. Option B, contract crews. Bring in 200 non-union contractors from out of state to keep the restoration moving while your union crews rest. It's fast, it keeps the numbers up, but you're putting unfamiliar workers on an unfamiliar grid, and the union will treat it as a declaration of war. Option C, executive deployment. Every VP, every director, the CEO, out in the field, on camera, working alongside the crews. It's a powerful symbolic move that could rally everyone to push through voluntarily. But your senior engineers are already running on fumes, and 2 of the best ones are close to walking out permanently. The clock is running. What do you do? The CEO chose to stand down. Every crew came off the grid for 24 hours. The governor's office put out a statement within the hour calling the decision unconscionable while families go without heat. It was brutal to watch. 400,000 homes sitting in the dark while Meridian linemen slept. But here's what happened when the crews came back. 0 additional injuries during the stand down. And when linemen returned after a full day of rest, their productivity surged 30%. Rested, focused, and safer. The stand down cost 2 days of restoration, but it almost certainly saved lives, and it definitely saved the company from a lawsuit that would have been far more expensive than 1 lost day. And then something happened that nobody expected. With the field operation paused, the engineering team finally got uninterrupted access to the failure data. They'd been running on fragments and partial reports for 3 days. Now, for the first time, they had the time to actually trace the cascade pattern, where it started, how it spread, and why 14 substations went down in sequence. What they found in that data is about to change everything you thought you knew about this crisis. On the paths not taken, if the CEO had brought in contract crews, restoration would have continued at pace until a non-union lineman was electrocuted at a substation in Tulsa. The union would have called a wildcat strike, and every restoration effort across 3 states would have frozen for 5 days. If the CEO had sent the executives to the field, the footage would have gone viral, and crews would have rallied hard. But within a month, 2 of Meridian's best senior engineers would have resigned from burnout, taking decades of institutional knowledge out the door with them. Cash drops to 53. Trust rises to 66. The stand-down earned real respect where it mattered. Momentum drops hard to 58. That 2-day delay cost you. Risk falls to 1, and runway is now 10 months. The engineering team has just requested an emergency meeting with you. Here's what the engineering team found, and it changes everything. For 3 days, every report, every news broadcast, every analyst's note assumed the same thing. The blackout cascaded from aging infrastructure. Old substations finally buckling under load, the inevitable result of decades of deferred maintenance. That was the story everyone was telling. That is not what happened. The cascade started at Eagle Creek, Meridian's newest substation, built in 2023 by a contractor called Lanton Brothers. Opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony, featured in the annual report as, quote, the future of American power infrastructure. Lanton used substandard materials, inferior-grade transformer cores, under-spec wiring, compromised concrete foundations. And Eagle Creek isn't an isolated case. 7 of the 12 substations Lanton built for Meridian show similar deficiencies. Here's where it gets personal. Meridian's VP of Infrastructure signed off on Lanton's work without an independent structural review. That review used to be mandatory until an efficiency initiative 18 months ago eliminated third-party inspections for any contractor with preferred partner status. Lanton had that status. And right now, $340 million of active Lanton Brothers contracts are under construction across your service area. They are building the centerpiece of your grid modernization plan at this very moment. The crisis you thought was about an old grid falling apart is actually about a new one being built wrong. And what comes next is going to test you in a way nothing else in this episode has. This is the decision that defines what kind of leader you actually are. 7 of 12 Lanton-built substations show material deficiencies. Eagle Creek, the one that started the entire blackout, had corroded wiring inside a facility that's barely 2 years old. Your VP of infrastructure signed off without independent verification. And right now, you have $340 million of active contracts with this company. They are building the future of your grid using the same methods and materials that destroyed your current one. Priya, your CFO, says, don't halt the construction. Just add independent inspectors to every active site and run a parallel review. If the work holds up, you've saved yourself 18 months. Marcus, your COO, says shut every site down immediately because you cannot afford another substation failure caused by a contractor you already know is compromised. And Tom, your chief engineer, says terminate the contract today, file a lawsuit, and bring in a firm that actually knows how to build a substation. 3 options. And for those of you who were paying very close attention to the company briefing at the start of this episode, there might be a 4th. Option A, controlled transition. You keep Lanton's projects running under new independent supervision while phasing in a replacement contractor over 6 months. No disruption, no public announcement. But if a second substation fails during that transition window, the fact that you kept a compromised contractor building your grid will fall directly on you. Option B, full shutdown. Halt all Lanton construction immediately and announce a comprehensive safety review of every substation they've ever touched. It's decisive, and it protects you legally. But the 18-month delay pushes your grid upgrades past 2 more storm seasons, with aging infrastructure still exposed. Option C, replace and sue. Fire Lanton today, file a $340 million negligence lawsuit, and bring in Bechtel Infrastructure to take over. It sends a clear message, and it's the right thing to do, but the lawsuit will drag on for years, and Bechtel is going to charge you significantly more. And then there's option D. For anyone who noticed something unusual in the company briefing, your newest substation, Eagle Creek, running above its rated capacity despite being built just 2 years ago, you can order an emergency shutdown and inspection of Eagle Creek right now. If your instinct about that station is right, you might be about to prevent a second blackout from hitting 400,000 homes before it even starts. What's your move? The CEO chose to replace and sue. Lanton Brothers' contract was terminated at a press conference that every major outlet covered live. A $340 million negligence lawsuit was filed the same afternoon. Bechtel Infrastructure was named as the replacement contractor within 48 hours. The stock dropped 4% on the timeline disruption, but public approval jumped 8 points overnight. People saw a CEO who found the problem and acted without hesitation. Bechtel's initial bid came in at $476 million, 40% above Lanton's original contract. And Lanton responded with a countersuit, claiming their work met every contracted specification. On the other paths, if the CEO had kept Lanton building under supervision, construction would have continued smoothly for about 3 months. And then a second Lanton-built substation would have shown microfractures in its transformer housing, and the headline would have been devastating. Meridian knew about Lanton and kept building. If the CEO had shut everything down, the stock would have dropped 11% in a single day. But the independent safety review would have found 4 additional compromised substations, all months from failure. The shutdown would have prevented at least 1 more blackout. And if the CEO had caught the Eagle Creek detail from the briefing and triggered the emergency shutdown, they would have found corroded wiring 72 hours from catastrophic failure. They would have prevented a second blackout affecting 400,000 homes. That single call would have changed the trajectory of this entire crisis. Cash falls to 41. Trust jumps to 76. The public rewards accountability. Momentum dips to 52. Risk drops all the way to 0. But runway falls to 7 months, and the bills from Bechtel haven't even started yet. And right on cue, the governor has been watching all of this very carefully. Governor Elena Marsh is running for Senate, and you just handed her the perfect campaign issue. She's proposing something called the Lights On Act. It's straightforward. A 3-year rate freeze for every Meridian customer, plus a $200 million infrastructure trust funded entirely by your shareholders. She's framing it as making the company pay for its own failures. And the lawsuit you just filed against Lanton, she's using your own words against you. If your contractor was building faulty substations, she argues, then your shareholders should fund the fix. Accept the deal and your finances collapse. At current cash levels, a 3-year rate freeze is a death sentence within 14 months. But fight her publicly, and you're the corporation attacking a grieving state where 4 people just died on your equipment. Priya says a 3-year rate freeze is mathematically unsurvivable. Marcus says take the hit and get the political target off your back before it turns into something you can't control. Tom says if rates freeze for 3 years, you won't have the revenue to rebuild the grid, which means more blackouts, and somebody needs to say that out loud before it's too late. Option A, accept the deal. Take the governor's terms in full. 3-year rate freeze, $200 million trust. Your stock craters and your board starts to fracture, but the political pressure disappears overnight, completely and permanently. Option B, counterproposal. You offer a modified deal, an 18-month rate cap instead of a freeze, with a shared infrastructure fund split 60-40 between Meridian and the state. It's a negotiation, and it might work, but negotiating during a crisis looks like you're putting a price tag on people's suffering. Option C, public fight. Reject the deal outright and make the case to the public that rate freezes are what cause blackouts. Starving the grid of revenue means starving the grid of repairs. It's a bold argument, and it happens to be true. But the governor has the political capital to make your life very difficult if you embarrass her. What's your call? The CEO chose the counterproposal. After 3 days of closed-door negotiations, the two sides reached a compromise, an 18-month rate adjustment cap, not a hard freeze, paired with a $120 million infrastructure trust funded 60% by Meridian and 40% by state bonds. The governor held a press conference calling it a first step toward accountability. The stock recovered 2% on the news. But the company just committed $72 million to the trust from its existing reserves, money that will not be available for operations, for the Bechtel contract, or for the grid rebuild. The political crisis is contained, not resolved. The governor took the deal, but she kept the receipts. On the other paths, if the CEO had accepted the deal in full, the stock would have dropped 30% overnight, and 2 board members would have started drafting resignation letters. But the governor would have backed off completely and moved on to the next campaign issue. If the CEO had gone with the public fight, the argument would have resonated. Customer advocacy groups rallied behind the idea that rate freezes cause more blackouts. But the governor would have doubled down and proposed a ballot measure for public ownership of Meridian's grid, turning a policy dispute into an existential political war. Cash is at 33, trust dips to 73, momentum edges up to 57, risk ticks back to 1, and your runway just fell to 5 months. 5 months of cash, a massive lawsuit in the courts, a new contractor billing 40% more than the last one, a governor who took the deal but is already thinking about round 2, and now there's only one question left. And it's the only one that actually matters. This is the last decision, and it's the only one that isn't about surviving the crisis. It's about deciding what comes after. Cash is at 33 out of 100. Runway is 5 months. The blackout is over, the lawsuits are filed, the governor has her deal, but the fundamental question underneath all of it still hasn't been answered. What is Meridian Power Holdings going to be in 10 years? Because right now, it is a company that cannot afford to stay the same. Consolidated American Power has put a formal acquisition offer on the table, $4.2 billion, a 15% premium to your current market value. Employees keep their jobs for 24 months, shareholders walk away with a healthy return, and the Meridian name disappears within a year. It's a clean exit, if that's what you want. Your head of strategy is pitching something radically different, a $2 billion pivot to distributed energy. Solar panels on rooftops, community battery storage, neighborhood microgrids. Skip the traditional grid rebuild entirely and leapfrog the entire industry by a decade. If it works, you're the most innovative utility in America. If it doesn't work, there is no backup plan. And then there's Tom's proposal, the one he's been drawing up since the first night of the blackout. He's calling it Project Fortress. $1.8 billion over 10 years to rebuild every single substation and replace every mile of aging transmission line on your grid, funded by municipal bonds and phased rate adjustments. It is not sexy. It will not trend on social media, but it might be the only plan that actually prevents the next 2.3 million homes from going dark. Priya says Consolidated's offer protects everyone, and sometimes the smartest move is knowing when the story is over. Marcus says the future is distributed energy, and if you don't pivot now, you're spending $2 billion building yesterday's grid. Tom says you rebuild it right, mile by mile, substation by substation, because shortcuts are exactly what got you here in the first place. Sell, pivot, or rebuild. This decision defines everything. The CEO chose the Fortress plan. The announcement came at a press conference held in front of the rebuilt Eagle Creek substation, $1.8 billion over 10 years. Every substation rebuilt to modern specifications, every mile of aging transmission line replaced, municipal bonds and phased rate adjustments funding the entire thing. The stock dropped 4% on the day and recovered within a week, as analysts called it the most credible utility turnaround plan in a decade. The board voted 7-2 to approve, with 2 members abstaining on concerns about the timeline. Cash reserves fell to critical levels, 3 months of runway. But for the first time since 2.3 million homes went dark on a Tuesday night, Meridian Power Holdings had a future it could actually point to. If the CEO had sold to Consolidated, employees would have kept their jobs for 2 years, and shareholders would have walked away with a solid return. But within 12 months, the Meridian name would have been erased from every building, and 3 substations would have been shuttered for cost optimization. The communities that trusted Meridian would have become a line item on someone else's spreadsheet. If the CEO had gone with the green pivot, the stock would have surged 22% on the announcement, but 6 months in, the battery supply chain would have collapsed, the deployment timeline would have doubled, and the board would have started wondering whether the CEO confused ambition with a viable strategy. Here are your final numbers. Cash, 25. Trust, 81. Momentum, 62. Risk, 0. Your composite score is 56. Your grade is B. Your archetype, the rebuilder. Your CEO code is D1B, D2A, D3C, D4B, D5C. The board's confidential assessment reads as follows. This CEO chose integrity over efficiency at nearly every crossroads, a philosophy the company's reputation can afford, but its balance sheet barely survives. Cash reserves are critical. Trust is exceptional. The Fortress plan is credible, but 10 years of flawless execution is a bet, not a guarantee. Recommendation: retain, with a CFO-led financial recovery mandate effective immediately. If you scored higher than the CEO, drop your code in the comments and prove it. If you scored lower, well, at least it didn't cost you 2.3 million customers to learn the lesson. Next time on FINESSE, the recall. Your autonomous vehicle just killed a pedestrian during a live stream test drive. Your stock is in free fall. Your lead engineer swears the algorithm worked exactly as it was designed to, and the victim's family is holding a press conference in 4 hours. 3 decisions will determine whether you survive the week and whether the world ever trusts your technology again. Subscribe and vote on the poll on screen now. We'll see you at the next briefing.